environment focus, sustainability, climate, all these things are kind of sitting in the back burner with majority of those startups or companies. What is your opinion in all this? Like you're more into all this, and you have understood this business very, very well. What is your take on it? Like, is that true that like sustainability is still not aligned with the strategy so much, or where we are?
Not at all. And as you know, I'm just finishing up SF Climate Week here in San Francisco. And I've just been really inspired by a lot of the startups, investors, and corporates that are out there actually making it happen. But I don't think sustainability is going away. I think it's just maturing. And so a lot of the conversations have moved from this is the right thing to do, lots of appeals to emotion, to really talking about standard business metrics. So instead of simply talking about sustainability, we're talking about things like the benefits that businesses get from it, like cost savings, like risk reductions, like better recruiting and more availability of talent. And then looking at more resilient supply chains and more resilient partnership networks throughout the world. And these are things we could have been talking about for the last 50, 100 years, right? These are standard business metrics, but they've been taken into the conversation around sustainability and sort of reformed into more of a moral argument, which I think is a correct moral argument, but that doesn't work on a P&L, right? There's no line item for what are you doing that's morally correct in the world, and are you saving the planet and helping society? There are becoming governance frameworks that help companies report on those things, and things like B corporations that have been formed to report out on not only their financial and economic benefits, but their social and environmental benefits. So that's great. But I think it's less of sustainability slipping behind or slipping away. It's more about the industry maturing in the way that they talk about it, and talking about it in ways that are really strategically advantageous to businesses. Like I said, with reducing costs of energy consumption or reducing waste. Why are we throwing things away that could actually be feedstocks for the new products that we're making? Risk reductions. So are we at risk in a supply chain somewhere? Is anything that you're building using child labor, for example? That's one, wrong. And two, a big risk to your business. So it just makes sense to understand what's happening throughout your supply chain, be able to audit that and make sure that you are doing the right thing yourself and you're pressuring and influencing your suppliers to be doing the right thing as well.
Yeah, you mentioned the right thing, like having governance in place and some regulations around it are good. Like it helps building brand and trust reputation also for businesses, like ESG score and some other certifications like Energy Star on the products, right, and ISO and other marks. Those are good. And definitely, like if businesses do partnerships with other businesses through procurement, like who are also environment friendly businesses, who also have alignment with that part of the climate, it's useful to society overall. But to your point, morality, and it doesn't go directly with P&L. So, and that's the challenging, how this can be blended into company's culture, so it is aligned with that moral grounds from top to bottom. Because unless it is driven through the top leadership, it is difficult, like company will follow.
Yeah, that's true. And so we talked about a lot of the sort of hard metrics around the P&L and profitability and all of that. But there's these what we call softer metrics, even though they're extremely important. So what's the culture of your company? Do people support it publicly and also internally? Because employees that are excited and motivated and interested in what your company is doing are, higher performers, are more loyal to the company and stay for longer. So there's lower costs of hiring new people and retraining. And like I said, there's lower risk to your brand in doing the right thing. So leaders at the top of some of these big corporations have always been able to influence the world in some way. We saw this with Walmart when they were first coming around. They grew into an enormous company that was pressuring their suppliers to drop their prices as low as humanly possible.
Yeah.
Some of that was done with, I would say, sketchy suppliers and sketchy practices in some of those suppliers. But I think Walmart has come a long way since then. But the point being that they use their massive buying power as a customer for these suppliers to change the way they do business. And the same thing is happening with moral, social, and environmental issues. So a lot of these big companies are now pressuring their suppliers to find more environmentally friendly and more socially friendly ways of producing things because they all have a target on their backs. Social media has become ubiquitous throughout the world. And they're actually sort of terrified that they'll get called out on social media for something going on. Someone will post a video of some of their workers doing something that they don't agree with, and they'll have people quit. They'll have people boycott their brands. We're seeing a lot of political blowback at Tesla, for example, a very forward-thinking, environmentally friendly in energy and transportation company. But because of the cultural blowback to the CEO, the company's having a hard time. So just one example. But yeah, there's a lot of power that they have to be able to pressure those suppliers and move that forward in a way that's going to help them.
Supply chain plays big part to the environment. And talking about Walmart as an example, they own the ecosystem. They have like their own farms all the way to the warehouses, like everything they own it themselves. So like it's good to the companies at this scale, taking care of all those things. But there are hidden truths also that we cannot really find out otherwise because it's their own system and it's not accessible outside. But on the other side, not every business can go to that scale, right? So for small businesses, it becomes challenging to contribute to this level of environmental priorities a lot because of like the focus is to survive in this competition against big giant companies like this. In this supply chain aspect of it, like in US, I was reading somewhere like majority of the emission is coming from commercial automobiles. I think the number is about like 60% of all carbon emission from automobile side. It's coming from commercial, means like trucks especially, right? They have big contribution to the carbon emission. And in this situation, of course, there are a lot of EV trucks are being discussed, and there are Tesla and other companies are working on it as well.
So you were talking a bit about the smaller companies versus the large ones.
Yeah.
And so how does a smaller company, a startup, really make an impact in this sector or in the world without the bargaining power of a Walmart or a JP Morgan or one of these mega companies, whatever industry they're in? And I think it's by doing what they do best and what they're able to do better than those big companies, which is to innovate. And so they're able to create new solutions much faster and get in touch with customers to solve really specific problems that big companies have trouble getting into as quickly, right? So the smaller companies, the startups, are quick and nimble. They can create prototypes faster, and they can look for points of value in the supply chain or the value chain that they can create something quickly and solve a real problem and provide some real value, but they have to be really disciplined about creating real business value.
Absolutely.
It can't be based on just marketing or just messaging.
That's a good point. Yeah. On the other side, like talking about big giant companies like Walmart, like they own their own supply chain, so they have better control. It's good. Like they can contribute at scale by just adding this sustainability aspect into their business strategy as a driving factor. So talking about supply chain here, like especially about transportation industry, and especially in US, like where a lot of ships coming, like we are big importers in the world. So I was reading at an article the other day that like just from automotive industry, like about 29% of emission is coming only from the commercial trucks, right? Over 1/4 of all emission is coming from commercial trucks, and those big trucks like moving all the time. I have seen also like companies like Tesla and other big brands are coming up with commercial trucks at scale, which will help to an extent. I have cross opinion here. Like maybe in the short run, it looks helpful. What is your take on the long-term factor, like how these trucks are being manufactured and what will happen in the end, like when they go end of life? Uh, it will have maybe it's longer than the engine trucks for sure, but eventually they will die. But what will happen in that case with all that? And to manufacture this scale of batteries need minerals, and we are limited on that. So how do you see that, where it is going?
Yeah, I think all of these things are enormous business opportunities. And it gets to this really critical point of using business as a mechanism to solve problems in the world. And so a lot of what happens is sort of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, right? So some people will say, well, EVs aren't environmentally friendly because they, use electricity from the grid. And where's that electricity being made? Usually that electricity is somewhat green. And even when it gets to the car, like 90+% of that energy is actually going to the wheels versus the electricity used to pump oil out of the ground, to then refine it, to ship it, get it to the car. And then when you set it on fire in the engine, only about 16% of that energy is actually going to the wheels. The rest of it is just wasted. So there's one part of it where they're just more efficient with the energy they use. And then the other part, to your point, is the end of life with the battery. And so there are companies like Redwood Materials, Ascend Elements, and many others out there that are doing several things along that end-of-life value chain. So there's something called second life batteries. So they'll take those EV batteries that are no longer good enough for a car, which needs to really quickly charge and discharge that battery, right, as it's stopping and starting. But it's plenty good for a stationary storage battery. So these large batteries that you see next to a solar farm or helping to manage the energy of a commercial or industrial building. So those old car batteries can be slipped into a container that acts just like a large stationary storage battery system. And so there it can live another 5-10 years and help to manage electricity. And then at the end of the day, that can now be recycled by some of these big companies that are perfecting some of the hydrometeorological processes to break those batteries down into those chemistries and the components so that they can get the raw materials again, which go back into the system to the battery manufacturers. So instead of throwing the baby out with the bathwater and saying these solutions aren't perfect, it's really important, especially as an innovator or startup founder, to look at these as opportunities and think, okay, there's a problem here. Let's think about the second order impacts and third order impacts of these products and solutions. And they have some cause, they have some harm. They have something that they're doing that's bad. It's never going to be 100% good. But because there's a problem there, there's a business opportunity. Can you take those materials and turn them back into raw materials? As you mentioned, critical materials like the platinum groups and the rare earth minerals are highly contentious on the geopolitical stage. And the US is a bit insecure right now about where they're going to get all of the rare earth minerals they need to be a leader in the clean energy economy, clean transportation, and even just managing energy and data centers and the data that we need. So one solution is figuring out more sustainable forms of mining that we can do in country or nearby. But the other part is not just throwing things away once we're done with them, but figuring out ways to reuse and recycle them, right? And just like you do with your paper bag when you go shopping, or you reuse a bag when you get your groceries, right? So we can do the same thing with larger products and services. And not only is that more environmentally friendly, it's a great business opportunity and it can reduce your costs.
That's a good view of it. Yeah, thank you.